So let me say good morning to our friends in North and South America. Good afternoon to our friends in UK, Europe. Good early evening to our friends in the Arab states. Good evening to our friends in India, Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia. Good late evening to our friends in Australia. Nice to see your faces. Hope that you are all doing okay. And I think we have some questions, JC.
Question 1, dear Ajahn. In Theravada suttas, Buddhahood is described as taking countless aeons to achieve. But in Vajrayana, they talk about achieving Buddhahood in a much shorter period of time, just several lifetimes and so on. Please comment on this. Thank you.
This is a very juicy question. This is a question which is potentially contentious. What if Ajahn Achalo dares say something not in accordance with some of the greatest Vajrayana masters? Oh dear. Fortunately, I can quote other people and that will help me stay out of trouble. But one of the things, I'm going to start answering this question by relaying a couple of stories. Recently, Ajahn Sunando went to visit a monk in a province called Burngan in northeast Thailand, Lumpur Bundet. And there was an 110-year-old monk there as well. It was Lumpur Bundet's birthday, and Ajahn Nando went to join the proceedings. Ajahn Biek also joined. And there's another interesting practitioner called Lumpur Rishi. The Rishi is like a forest dwelling, Rishi. And so this Lumpur Rishi, I guess by appearance, looks to be about 60. But this 110-year-old monk relayed the story that when he was a little boy, he used to give alms to this Rishi that looked 60. So that would mean that the Rishi that looks 60 is at least 130. But according to the legend, the Rishi is 900 years old. And I can't vouch for that. I don't know if that's the case. But what I have heard is that when this Rishi speaks Thai, even Thai people only understand half of it, because languages change over centuries. Words develop different connotations. And so there is some anecdotal evidence that this practitioner has been around for a very long time. When the Thai people don't understand the Thai of this person, and when the oldest monk in the room remembers giving alms food to him when he was a little boy. So apparently, this Rishi has the ability to dissolve the physical body into light when it gets to a certain age and regenerate it in the form of a young man again and maintain the memories of that life. So every, 50 or so years, this Rishi may have been dissolving the 4 elements into ether and reassembling them without going anywhere. Now, like I said, I don't know if this is a fact, but I'll tell you something else. Lumpur Biek is considered to be the monk in the Ajahn Chah's lineage who has the most potent psychic powers and a very developed divine eye, so he can see things that other people can't because of the power of his samadhi. And he said about Lumpur Rishi Ketgao that when he spreads loving kindness into the Lokadhatu, the world element, he says his metta is already at the level of Buddhas, and that one only sees that kind of loving kindness when a teaching Buddha is in the world. And Lumpur Piek also said that this Rishi is, if this Buddha was the fourth Buddha of this eon, then apparently Lumpur Rishi Ketgao will be the Buddha in 9 more Buddhas' time. So he's the 15th Buddha, if the current one is the 4th. So Lumpur Piek can see that. Lumpur Piek can see that this practitioner's metta feels the universe as far as his divine eye can see. So Lumpur Piek, who's reputed to be an arahant, disciple of Lumpur Cha, would not say these kind of things lightly. So if the Rishi does have the ability to spread loving kindness throughout the entire world system, and Ajahn Chah's most gifted arahant disciple with regards to psychic powers praises him, again, this is more anecdotal evidence that perhaps the Rishi is 900 years old. Perhaps he can dissolve his body into ether and reassemble it. Anyway, what on earth is the Ajahn talking about, and why is he talking about it? How does this relate to the question? My answer is, if you are an extremely developed practitioner, yes, you can probably attain to Buddhahood practicing Vajrayana methods. Lord Buddha also said that in those who practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness correctly can attain arahantship in 7 days, or 7 months, or 7 years. And I know a whole bunch of monks who put a pretty sincere effort into their practice and didn't become arahants in 7 days, 7 months, or 7 years. So what's going on? Some of them very frustrated. 7 years already. So the point is, now I'm going to quote His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Some people know this, many people don't know this. When I was an 8 Pansa Bhikkhu, gosh, I'm getting old. When was that? 17 years ago, I went to Sera Monastery in southern India, and I stayed. Sera Monastery is the largest Tibetan monastery outside of Tibet. I think it has about 3,000 or 4,000 bhikkhus. And the Dalai Lama was teaching a commentary on the Bodhisattva Bhumis, a text by somebody called Asanga, who apparently had gone to heaven and received these teachings from Maitreya. Then came, or either that or he'd received the teachings from Maitreya and visions. Maitreya, the next teaching Buddha. So the Dalai Lama was giving quotations from this text and giving a commentary, reading the text and giving a commentary on it. So I think it was a 9-day teaching. And he was talking during that teaching about the qualities that bodhisattvas have to be able to develop on their path to Buddhahood. And I think one of them was that they have to be able to create a world with cities and enough emanation bodies to kind of populate a world and a city, but they're all aspects of their own mind. Again, whether you believe this or not, I'm not saying you have to believe it. I'm just telling you what the Dalai Lama said. That somebody who's really on the bodhisattva path, who's going to be a teaching Buddha, has to have really amazing, extraordinary abilities. Well, that makes sense. Our Buddha did. But during these teachings, the Dalai Lama also quoted these statements that are made in Vajrayana Buddhism by some of the greatest lamas themselves, whose texts became famous books, was that Vajrayana is superior because by practicing Vajrayana Tantra, one can attain to Buddhahood in a single lifetime because of the superiority of the methods. So this is a quote that one often hears. And then the Dalai Lama himself said, but I have not yet met anybody who did that. Which is interesting, because in Buddhism, we have to be able to verify statements with facts or evidence or examples. If it's a teaching which is based on truth and reflects the truth, okay. If one can attain to Buddhahood by practicing Vajrayana Tantra, where are they? Show me one. And the Dalai Lama said he hadn't met one yet. And he's what? The most famous, most significant teacher in the Vajrayana tradition. So if anybody should have met one, he should have. And then he said, furthermore, I'm quoting the Dalai Lama from something he said 17 years ago to a group of 5,000, no, there were 15,000 because all of the Tibetan monks from all of the monasteries came. 15,000 monks, he says, I personally relate to this statement as being like Chinese Communist Party propaganda. A pretty serious statement. The truth of the matter is, becoming a Buddha takes millions of lifetimes. Another thing he said was, this vow that we take to liberate all sentient beings. Another thing that the Vajrayanists often do when talking about why Vajrayana is superior to Theravada is because they believe that in attaining Buddhahood, they will also liberate all sentient beings. It's in the prayers. I vow to attain Buddhahood in order to liberate all sentient beings. Sadhu. There's a problem with this, though, isn't there? There's still a lot of sentient beings. I don't know if you've noticed. So if even one person could have liberated all sentient beings through practicing Vajrayana Tantra, we wouldn't be here, would we? It would be very, very nice if somebody could do that. Please liberate me. I'm also sick of my deluded mind states. Please liberate me from them. Now, when we look at the Theravada suttas, Lord Buddha says, I point the path the practitioner must walk in. Nobody can liberate you. You have to liberate yourself. Then the Dalai Lama said, oh yes, with regards to this verse that we always say, actually, it's not really possible to liberate all sentient beings. And then he made a very interesting point. He said, however, and he was talking to 15,000 monks and nuns, if all of us aspire to Buddhahood, then it begins to start to look possible. Because every single being has karmic connections with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of beings. And if you attain to Buddhahood and you develop the bodhisattva path over millions of lives, then the beings that have the karmic connection with you, you help them to be liberated, and I do the ones that connected with me, and every single one of you do it. Well, then we start to get a serious movement towards liberating all sentient beings, which is why everybody should aspire to Buddhahood. Okay, the Dalai Lama is going to hold the flag for the bodhisattvas, of course. But he did say it is not possible to liberate all sentient beings. And he did say that one does not attain Buddhahood by practicing Vajrayana Tantra within one lifetime. So I don't know if it speeds it up a bit. I guess the point in the bodhisattva path, the way I understand it, it's not about being in a hurry. the reason it takes so long is because people have to establish the positive karmic connections with millions and billions of beings, so that by the time they become a Buddha, they are able to liberate a vast multitude of beings. So there's a reason it takes a long time. So if anybody wants to follow that path, you have my wholehearted mudita, and I wish you every success. May those billions of lives not feel oppressive by the power of the beautiful present moment. It's just one moment after all, isn't it? For those of you who aspire to arahantship, may you achieve it swiftly with every blessing. That's another thing that somewhat seems to be a bit confused in a way. Like, I do respect the Vajrayana, and I have Vajrayana practitioner friends. I'm not anti-Vajrayana, but I'm telling you, sometimes it's like these more faithy statements seem to be there to arouse enthusiasm for the practice. So, okay, if you really believe that by practicing these methods, you can become a Buddha this lifetime and liberate all sentient beings, you might put a whole lot more effort into your practice this lifetime. Okay. I can see whoever thought this up as a skillful means, I can see where they may have been coming from. But when you get down to the nitty-gritty about what's literally possible, then it's a little bit different. So we have to mindfully plod and develop our strengths and work on our weaknesses. And the wonderful thing is the potential. At least the potential for Buddhahood really is there. And another area I was going to mention, which seems to be they seem to be down on arahants in the Vajrayana. The arahants tend to get a bad rap. But what's curious in the chant that we do, Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato, Lord Buddha describes himself as an arahant. So arahant means enlightened one. And the Vajrayanists are often saying, I don't want to be an arahant, I want to be enlightened. So it's like, well, arahants are enlightened. Lord Buddha says in the suttas repeatedly that the arahant has attained to the same level of liberation as the Buddha. So the mind is liberated. And then, so that's Buddha Vajana, that's from the Buddha's, at least in the suttas, that's the Buddha's words. And sometimes the Vajrayana says the arahants haven't finished, they have to come out of Nibbana and cultivate further to become Buddhas, but that is not mentioned in any of the 84,000 Dhamma verses in the Sutta Pitaka. And Ajahn told me himself that he couldn't, I believe he's an arahant, he couldn't see how that would be possible. Because one attains to arahantship by letting go of all attachments. That's what you have to do. And so if you have any attachments left at all, you're not going to, the mind is not going to be fully liberated into the Nibbana element, Nibbana Dhatu. It's not going to be purified. The attachment that the bodhisattvas have, high-level bodhisattvas only have one last remaining attachment, and the attachment that they have is to the well-being of others. And that's what stops them from becoming fully liberated and experiencing the same quality of liberation as the Buddhas and the Arahants. But Lord Buddha describes himself as an Arahant, and I think this is an important thing to notice. What's the difference between Arahant Buddha and other Arahants? There is a difference. Lord Buddha has enormous qualities that ordinary Arahants don't have. And he has vast merits, incredibly vast merits, just unimaginably vast merits. And those merits are what helps his lineage, his teachings remain in the world. This Buddha is, apparently his teachings will remain to some degree for 5,000 years. That's no small feat. But that's because, in large part, due to the merit of the Buddha and all of the beings that make good karma with him. So, the Buddhas are experiencing the same quality of liberation, but they have much more vast depth to their abilities and oceans more merits, which they benefit many, many more beings with. So yes, there is a difference in the qualities and in the merit. But the Buddha says himself, that the liberation is the same. So that went on for a while, didn't it? Like I said, juicy subject. Next question, JC.
Thank you, Ajahn. Question 2. Hi, dear Ajahn. I wish to fast for longer periods, but I'm afraid I might get gastric problems. How is it that many monks take one meal a day and still do not get gastric issues? Thank you.
Yeah. So my preceptor, Liam, who did keep the 1 meal a day practice very strictly for a long time, now does take a rice porridge and some bananas for breakfast because he did get a stomach ulcer. And a monk who I became a monk with, Ajahn, also got a stomach ulcer, and he also has a breakfast. And even Ajahn Siripanyo, the forest-dwelling, strict monk on the border of Burma, at one stage developed a stomach ulcer. So there is a danger to it's important to understand that the 1 meal a day practice was never recommended in and of itself as a practice most conducive to perfect health. It was a practice that has the function of freeing up an enormous amount of time. And also, how much do people are pretty obsessed with food, right? And so think about what you're going to eat several times a day. It's going to consume a lot more mental energy. And then there's the preparation, and then there's the cleaning up, there's going to the restaurant or various things. So preparing food, eating food, cleaning up after preparing and eating food, it takes a lot of time. And so when you, as is the case in the forest monasteries, when you have one main meal mid-morning, then the rest of the day you don't think about it. You don't see it, you don't think about it, you don't smell it. And you have all of this time to sit meditation, walk meditation, study suttas, practice chanting. So in terms of liberating oneself from samsara, you get a lot more time, you're able to put a lot more effort into it. And, depending on your karma, some people have very robust health karma, they don't get any digestive issues, and some people do. For myself, when I came to this monastery, I decided to tweak the daily schedule a little bit. We do have fruit after our alms round, and we do put something in our stomach, and then we have an hour and a half break where we have the main meal at 9:30. So most monasteries in Thailand, it's the main meal at 8:30. And I did, because I was close to 40 when I arrived here, and I had been doing the 1 meal a day practice most of 15 previous years. I didn't want to get a stomach ulcer. And I also wanted to be able to meditate with a fairly light stomach after some fruit before the main meal, before the day got hot. So, okay, when you're an abbot, you can tweak things a little bit. And so I did make some adjustments. But it is also curious that recent research into what they call intermittent fasting has shown some very interesting things, which I think does point to the Buddha's breadth of wisdom. And if one divided into an 8-hour period where one does consume calories and a 16-hour period where one doesn't, this has enormous benefits for health. Apparently during the fasting period, the body will go into kind of detox mode and clean up some of the messes in the body. And it also metabolizes fat that's been stored up. After about 12 hours, the body starts to metabolize fat. So just doing that without doing any exercise, the body will start to lose weight. If you have the same amount of food, but you have it within an 8-hour period. If you have 16 hours where you don't eat, most people experience that they will lose weight. So many monks will have a breakfast and a lunch. And one of the things that complicates things is when people have a 1 meal a day and then have a lot of sugar in the afternoon. That's really bad for health. A lot of studies on cancer have shown that a high sugar intake is a large factor in who develops cancer. So I'm actually keeping the intermittent fasting regime quite strictly just now. And some people have said to me recently, Ajahn, you recently turned 50 and you look younger. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe these people are trying to butter me up. I don't know. But one of the theories or some of the research about the intermittent fasting is that during the 16 hours that the body is not digesting, it's, well, some of those is digesting, but after 12 hours, it's not digesting and it's metabolizing fats. Apparently, it also stimulates sick or not very healthy cells to die off. And then that causes new healthier cells to be born in place of them. And so, yeah, long story short, not eating too much. I mean, a lot of the diseases in the modern world are caused by excess. And the sugar issue and the refined carbohydrates issue is a serious issue, as is the saturated fats issue. But so for myself, yeah, I have my fruit, I have my main meal, and then I have to have my sugary sweet drink at 3:30 in the afternoon instead of 6:30 at night. That's the only real change I had to make, was to have my evening drink mid-afternoon instead of late evening. And I did lose 4 kilograms, and which is nice. What I really like about it is that if somebody offers durian with the fruit and there's a brownie with the meal, I don't have to force myself to exercise. I can eat the durian, I can have the brownie, and I won't get fatter. At least that's the theory. I guess if I eat durian and brownie every day, I possibly will get fatter. But anyway, fortunately, I don't eat it every day. Yeah, so experiment, I guess. I mean, for different people will find a different 8-hour period works better with their biorhythms or their metabolism. So for myself, it's part of my lifestyle. I don't have a choice. I'm not allowed to eat solids after midday. That's my bhikkhu's rules. But for other people, they'll have a cup of tea in the morning and they'll have their lunch at midday and their dinner at night, but they'll skip breakfast and can experiment. I think it's healthier to have 2 meals. The 1 meal a day is what the Buddha called Dhuṭaṅga practices. Dhuṭaṅga is like an extra strict practice. He recommended them, but he didn't require them. The reason he recommended them is because he described them as being for shaking off defilements. So obviously we have a lot of attachment, a lot of fantasy, a lot of obsession around food. When you only allow yourself to eat once a day, you're cutting back how much you're allowing yourself to do that, right? So it is affecting the level of greed in the mind. And yeah, if it's just not an option, or what you find, if it's just not an option to eat, you'll find that you'll stop thinking about it. And yeah, in the monasteries, we're lucky because, you know, it's kind of harder as a layperson if you go out and you smell delicious food, especially in Asia. There's a lot of great smelling food made on the streets. So it's, yeah, 16 and 8, I think is a good model, healthy model. Obviously, people who have diabetes or digestive issues need to consult with your doctor first.
Ajahn, question 3. Dear Ajahn, should monks denounce all attachments to commercial interest?
I think the best thing to do with that question is refer to the rules that Lord Buddha laid down for monks. So he said that monks are not allowed to receive money in their personal name, and they're not supposed to consider it to be their money. People can offer money and it goes into, it's understood that it's taken care of by a steward. Often with the monasteries in the Western countries, they're set up under kind of charitable, so the charity or the foundation receives the offerings. The way we should understand it is that that money still belongs to the donor. It never became, if somebody wants to offer some funds for Ajahn Achala's needs, it never became my money. It became that person's money that can be exchanged for something that I need. And the steward holds that money. And that's an important check and balance, because if the monk starts to want to purchase things which aren't appropriate, then the steward can kind of say, well, I don't know if you should be buying drugs, or I don't know if you should be paying for online violent computer games or whatever it is. You know, there's checks and balances. If I had a credit card with a lot of funds in it and nobody knew what I was doing with that, I could get up to all sorts of naughty things. So I'm very grateful personally that Lord Buddha laid down the rules and explained them in that way. And, it helps. He did also say that when there is a building project in a monastery, a monk is to be designated to take care of that project, and that monk is to oversee the funds that are given to the steward, to make sure that the funds are spent properly and to make sure that people are paid. Like, he didn't say people couldn't be involved in accounts or accounting at all. We have to be practical in the world. But it's more of a liaising, keeping an eye on things, making sure that monies that were given for a particular project are used for that project, that the donor's intentions are honored. So none of that I've described is commercial. But then you do have, in Thailand, you have this tradition. In Thailand, people love amulets, and they have for about 1,000 years. And you do have various monasteries making amulets blessed with special kind of things in them, and special chanting done over them. And there's kind of like a recipe. Like, a really good amulet should have bricks from an old chetty and parts of old amulets and flowers from a shrine and holy water and chalk from a blackboard where suttas were written. The chalk that comes off from there's a real spices, fragrances. There's a real art to it. And there's probably something to it. If somebody really knows how to make an amulet, there's going to be some good energy in there. But in the modern day, they do sell them. The most famous among the Thai amulets was Somdet Do, and he didn't sell them. He handed them out for free. But now they are as gifts. But now they are worth millions of bahts for people who want them. So yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because part of the problem is the lay people want them. So it's a lot of times lay people like to kind of, the ones who know more about the rules, or the ones who are more into practice, they like to sit back and say, the monks these days are no good. They're into money, they're into this, they don't keep the rules. And they're not paying attention to the fact that there's about 50 million Thai people that want an amulet and will pay for it. So is it entirely the monk's fault? It's always a bit more complicated than that, isn't it? So, do I think monks should abandon commercial interests? Yes, I do. Will they? Probably not. So, then, choose your teachers, choose your monks carefully. And I'm not even saying that all of the monks that have amulets that are for sale in their monasteries are bad monks. Some of them might be good. This is the thing about, one has to have a bit of an open mind and actually look at a situation. What are the good things going on there? What are the not so good things going on there? Have a bit of an open mind and observe things for periods of time. And obviously in the Mahayana, it's quite different. The Mahayana practitioners and city monks in Thailand do handle money, and they do accept it as personal. And it's probably only about 5% of monks in Thailand don't have personal funds anymore. So 95% of the monks do have personal funds. Yeah, it's normal. The further we get away from the Lord Buddha, the less strict practicing monks and nuns there will be. But there are still some. And, like I said, be careful with a judgmental mind. I know monks, I know some great monks who do handle money, and, who are involved in developing other monastery, senior monks in what we call the city, in the Wat Ban tradition, that sometimes the abbot takes over the finances of the monastery so that other people won't steal it. You know, it's just like if he knows that he's responsible and he knows that if he keeps an eye on it, he's going to use it for the right reasons and no one else is going to steal it and make that kind of karma that will lead to a hellish rebirth or birth as a hungry ghost or what have you, then some abbots make that decision. And I do know city monks who are very responsible and careful and not heedless with money. It's not everybody gets deluded by it. Unfortunately, most people probably do. And, the standard in the Ajahn tradition is that the monastery should have a committee and that all big projects are discussed with the committee, and then individual monks, if funds are given for their needs, there are stewards. We keep the rules try to keep the rules in letter and in spirit. So.
Question for Ajahn. Ahuneyyo, pāhuneyyo, dakkhineyo, añjali-karaṇīyo. Worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respect. Dear Ajahn, what's the difference between Ahuneyyo, gifts, versus dakkhineyo, offerings? Thank you.
So I'm not a Pali expert, but I do have a friend who is. So I asked him, Ajahn Maha Adisak, he has spent the rainy season here twice, and he has what they call Payokgao. He's studied to the 9th level in the study tradition. Kind of, he's the equivalent of a professor of Pali and various other things. And he says Ahuneyyo is, the various things that you would give: robes, food, medicines. Dakkhineyo, he said, is related to gifts that one gives to others for the sake of dedicating the merit of that to deceased relatives. So in India, I'm sure it was the case that there were all sorts of traditions of people giving offerings to Brahmin priests and certain things like that for the sake of dedicating merits to mum, dad, auntie, uncle, grandparents, etc. And some of those offerings were kind of unskillful, like you would give a cow or a goat to sacrifice, and then believing that that was a merit and dedicate the merit to your mum and your dad. There were certain elements of wrong view present. So the Buddha is saying that to make offerings for the sake of dedicating to one's relatives to the well-practiced monks and nuns they are worthy of it. They are worthy objects for developing that kind of merit to be able to share it with others. So Ahuneyyo, gifts for the needs of the bhikkhu. Dakkhineyo, gifts. Sometimes there's like flowers, right? Like monks don't need beautiful jasmine garlands. But when you offer something fragrant and beautiful, and you get the merit of that, and you can dedicate that merit. Different types of merit have different, if you give medicines, then you dedicate the merit to somebody who you love who's sick, for example. Sometimes some of the great monks get a little bit unwell when they get older. Their disciples will release buffaloes and cows and truckloads of fish and things like that, and dedicate the merit of liberating beings who were destined to be slaughtered to their teachers, so that their teachers may have extra added life force and long life, etc. So whatever challenges you face, may you get through them. May you focus on the positives. May you not collect and hold grudges. May you understand the law of karma. Forgive constantly yourself and others as you progress along this path slowly and steadily. Wishing you all well. Good to see you. Look forward to seeing you next time, life permitting.
Thank you, Prajan.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Thank you, Prajan.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Thank you.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.